Prepare yourself for a chilling story that might haunt you for a long time. The tale we're about to explore is inspired by the darkest corners of the human psyche, where the line between sanity and madness blurs. This is not just a case. It's a journey into primal fear and the complexities of a shaken society. Before we venture into the shadows of Chicago, where a killer sowed terror, I have a small request. If you find this story captivating, if you feel a chill run down your spine, remember to subscribe or follow so you don't miss out on the compelling stories and future installments we'll bring. Your support motivates us to keep telling these thought-provoking tales. Now, turn off the lights, draw the curtains, and prepare for the Silent Weaver. The city of Chicago, a sprawling metropolis of steel and glass, usually hummed with an indomitable rhythm, a symphony of ambition and everyday life. But on a frigid Tuesday morning in late November, that rhythm faltered, giving way to a dissonant whisper of dread. It began subtly, an isolated incident, easily dismissed as a tragic, if brutal, anomaly. Yet, as the threads of the story would eventually reveal, it was the first deliberate stitch in a macabre tapestry woven by a calculating hand. Detective Miles Corbin had seen it all. 25 years on the force had etched lines around his weary eyes and a permanent furrow in his brow. He'd navigated gang wars, domestic disputes, corporate embezzlements, and the gut-wrenching silence of a child's murder scene. He prided himself on his inability to be shocked, a necessary shield in his line of work. But the scene in the modest, meticulously kept apartment on the north side, just off Lincoln Avenue, was different. It wasn't the blood, though there was plenty, it was the precision of the act that gnawed at him. The victim was Eleanor Vance, a 63-year-old retired librarian, known for her quiet demeanor and her love for rare books. Neighbors described her as a harmless, almost invisible presence, the kind of woman who baked cookies for new residents and watered communal plants without being asked. Her apartment, usually a haven of order, was a tableau of controlled chaos. Furniture was overturned, books scattered like fallen leaves, and a faint, acrid smell lingered in the air. A mix of cleaning solutions and something metallic, almost like old pennies. Eleanor herself lay on the ornate Persian rug in her living room, her eyes wide open, staring at a ceiling she would never see again. The cause of death was blunt force trauma, a single, devastating blow to the back of the head. But what caught Corbin's eye, what sent an inexplicable shiver down his spine, was the small, intricately tied black silk knot placed precisely on her chest, just above her heart. It was delicate, almost artistic, completely out of place in the brutal scene. Anything taken, detective? His partner, Detective Lena Hansen, a sharp, pragmatic woman 10 years his junior, asked, her voice low. She was scanning the room with her tablet, meticulously cataloging every detail. Corbin shook his head, his gaze still fixed on the knot. Doesn't look like it. Valuables are still here. Wallet untouched on the counter. Jewelry still on her. No signs of forced entry. It almost looks staged, if that makes sense. Staged for what? A message. Hansen knelt, her gloved fingers hovering over the knot. This is weird. Not your typical gang execution, not a robbery gone wrong. Even a domestic dispute usually has more frantic energy. Less deliberateness. The forensics team, led by the unflappable Dr. Anya Sharma, moved with practiced efficiency, their camera flashes illuminating the grim details. Dr. Sharma examined the knot with a pair of tweezers. Definitely silk. Hand-tied. Very specific. I'll get it to the lab, but I doubt it'll yield much beyond fabric fibers. Corbin spent the next few days in a fog of frustration. The Eleanor Vance case was a dead end. No witnesses, no CCTV footage, no leads from the knot, which, as Dr. Sharma predicted, was just a knot. The police department filed it under unexplained homicide, a chilling label that spoke volumes about their lack of progress. The local news ran a brief segment, a lament for an elderly woman, then moved on to the city council elections and the rising cost of living. Chicago, in its vastness, swallowed the tragedy whole. Then came the second whisper, louder this time, impossible to ignore. 2 weeks later, almost to the day. This time, The victim was Marcus Thorne, a successful 38-year-old software engineer, found in his luxury high-rise apartment in the bustling Loop District. The scene was eerily similar. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, and an immediate, precise cause of death, a single, clean stab wound to the heart, almost surgical in its execution. And there it was again on his crisp white shirt, a small black silk knot tied with the same intricate precision. Corbin felt the blood drain from his face as he stared at the knot. "Son of a bitch," he muttered, the words barely audible. He looked at Hansen, whose eyes mirrored his own dawning horror. "It's the same," she breathed, her hand instinctively going to her mouth. "The exact same knot." The difference between Eleanor Vance and Marcus Thorne couldn't have been starker. An elderly, retired librarian living a quiet life versus a young, ambitious tech professional at the peak of his career. No apparent connection, no shared social circles, no geographic proximity beyond being in the same city. This wasn't a random act of violence. It was deliberate, calculated, and terrifyingly cold. The city, which had barely registered Eleanor Vance's passing, could not ignore Marcus Thorne's. His high-profile job, his social media presence, the sheer audacity of a murder in a secure, upscale building, it screamed for attention. The media descended like vultures, their cameras flashing, microphones thrust at bewildered neighbors and stony-faced police officers. The whispers of dread turned into a roar. Panic began to ripple through the city. Chief of Police Walter Davies, a man more comfortable with press conferences than police work, called an emergency meeting. "Corbin Hansen," he began, his voice tight with barely contained fury. "What in God's name is going on? 2 victims, no leads, and a goddamn calling card? Are we dealing with a serial killer?" Corbin laid out the grim facts. "The modus operandi is identical. The signature knot is identical. The lack of forced entry, the precision of the kills, the absence of robbery, it all points to a highly organized, highly intelligent perpetrator. And yes, Chief, we're likely dealing with a serial killer." The word hung heavy in the air, a chilling pronouncement that sent a collective shudder through the room. Chicago had its share of violence, but a phantom killer, striking seemingly at random, leaving behind an artistic, taunting signature, was a different beast altogether. This was the kind of monster that preyed on the imagination, shattering the illusion of safety in a city that prided itself on resilience. The next few weeks were a blur of frantic activity. A task force was assembled, a dedicated team of detectives, forensic specialists, and profilers. Every minute detail of both victims' lives was dissected. Their phone records, financial transactions, social media footprints, past relationships, work histories, everything was scrutinized. But the more they dug, the less they found to connect Eleanor Vance and Marcus Thorne. It was as if the killer had plucked 2 disparate threads from the vast tapestry of Chicago and meticulously woven them into his own dark design. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a renowned criminal psychologist from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, was brought in. Her sharp, intelligent eyes missed nothing, her analytical mind dissecting the limited information they had. She observed the photos of the crime scenes, the meticulous placement of the knots. "This isn't about rage, not directly," she stated, her voice calm but authoritative. "This is about control. The precision of the kills, the deliberate placement of the knots, it's ritualistic. The killer is sending a message or perhaps enacting a personal philosophy. The lack of a clear motive or connection between the victims is a key component of that message. Unpredictability. He wants to sow fear, not just in the victims, but in the entire community." Corbin, who initially viewed profilers with a healthy dose of skepticism, found himself listening intently to Dr. Reed. "And the knot?" he asked. "What does that tell us?" "The knot is fascinating," Reed mused, picking up one of the evidence photos. "It's an act of creation, of tying things together. But in this context, it feels like an assertion of power, a symbol of entanglement, or perhaps a twisted sense of purpose. He's a weaver of fates, in his own mind. He chose black silk, a material associated with elegance, mystery, sometimes mourning. He's sophisticated, meticulous, and deeply disturbed. He finds meaning in chaos, and he's creating his own. The city outside the sterile walls of the police department was transforming. Fear was a tangible entity, hanging in the cold winter air. People walked faster, looked over their shoulders more frequently. Nightlife dwindled, and empty seats appeared in once bustling restaurants. Social media buzzed with speculation, theories ranging from the plausible to the utterly outlandish. The Silent Weaver, as the media had dubbed him, became an urban legend in the making, a shadowy figure who could strike anywhere, at any time, leaving only his chilling signature. Corbin found himself walking the streets of Chicago late at night, not in uniform, just watching, listening. He saw the fear in people's eyes, the way they clutched their coats tighter, quickened their steps when passing dark alleys. He felt the weight of it, the immense pressure to catch this phantom. He understood Reed's assessment: the killer wasn't just taking lives. He was unraveling the very fabric of the city's peace. He was weaving a new reality, one thread of terror at a time. One evening, staring out from his office window at the glittering expanse of the city, Corbin saw the lights twinkling, millions of individual lives, each a potential thread. He imagined the killer out there, somewhere among them, watching, planning, meticulously preparing his next stitch. The thought sent a cold dread through him, a feeling that this was only the beginning, and the pattern was far from complete. The winter months bled into spring, but the chill in Chicago's air wasn't just from the weather. The Silent Weaver continued his macabre work, each new victim tightening the invisible noose of fear around the city. 3 more murders followed in quick succession, each baffling in its execution and the apparent randomness of its victim. First was Dr. Anya Sharma, the same meticulous forensic scientist who had analyzed the initial knots. Her body was found in her pristine suburban home, a short drive from the city center. This time, the knot was placed on her open forensic textbook, a cruel twist of irony. Her death sent shockwaves through the police department, elevating the crisis to a personal vendetta for many. Was the killer taunting them, showing his reach, his audacity? Next, a week later, was David "Davy" O'Connell, a beloved local bartender in his late 20s, known for his infectious laugh and his uncanny ability to remember everyone's favorite drink. He was found in his small studio apartment in Logan Square, the black silk knot resting on his well-worn guitar. The method was different yet again, a single, precise cut to the throat. Finally, just as the city was reeling from Davy's death, Sarah Chun, a 40-year-old high school history teacher and single mother of 2, was discovered in her car, parked discreetly in a bustling parking garage downtown. She had been strangled, and the knot, as always, was carefully placed on a laminated picture of her children, found tucked into her sun visor. The sheer diversity of the victims was maddening. An elderly librarian, a tech executive, a forensic scientist, a bartender, a history teacher. Age, profession, socioeconomic status, geography, there seemed to be no discernible pattern. The only constant was the killer's calling card and the chilling precision of his methods. Each murder escalated the fear, turning daily life into a series of anxious glances and hurried movements. People avoided public transit late at night, restaurant reservations plummeted, and parents walked their children to school with a new, grim determination. The media, no longer just reporting, had become part of the fear machine, their sensational headlines fueling the panic. Chief Davies was under immense pressure from the mayor's office, from the public, and from his own increasingly demoralized force. The task force, now numbering over 100 individuals, worked round the clock, fueled by caffeine and an almost desperate need for a break. Dr. Evelyn Reed's profile grew more refined, more unsettling. "He's evolving," Reed explained to a frustrated Corbin and Hansen in a late-night briefing. "Each victim seems to be chosen for a different reason, or perhaps to broaden the scope of his message. Dr. Sharma was a direct challenge to us, a way of demonstrating his superior intellect and reach. Davy O'Connell, a social connector, someone who brought people together. Sarah Chun, a nurturer and educator, a mother. He's attacking the very pillars of society, or perhaps people who represent what he perceives as a false order or tangled truths. The knots, they still signify control, the binding of fates, but also perhaps the unraveling of what he sees as illusions. Corbin, exhausted but relentless, stared at the wall of victim photos. But what's the connection? There has to be something. A subtle link, a common thread that only he sees. That's what makes him so dangerous, Reed replied. His logic is internal, deeply pathological. We're looking for an external pattern, but his pattern is likely symbolic, deeply personal to him. He could be someone completely unremarkable, someone who blends into the background, observing us all. The task force pursued every conceivable lead. They interviewed hundreds of people, followed up on thousands of tips, many of them hoaxes or wild goose chases. They cross-referenced victim data, looking for any shared experiences: a specific school, a common online forum, a restaurant, a past legal case, a doctor. Nothing. The deeper they delved, the more tangled the web became, offering no clear path. Corbin felt the weight of the city on his shoulders. The sleepless nights blurred into days, the faces of the victims haunting his dreams. He saw his own reflection in the darkened office window, haggard, his usually neatly combed hair now perpetually disheveled. His wife had stopped asking when he'd be home, opting instead for a weary silence that spoke volumes. "We need a break, Miles," Hansen said one morning, finding him staring blankly at a map of Chicago dotted with the locations of the murders. A real one, something tangible. The tangible break came, ironically, from the very first victim, Eleanor Vance, unearthed by a diligent junior detective reviewing old evidence logs. Eleanor's apartment had been meticulously cleaned before the murder, a habit of hers. But hidden beneath a loose floorboard in her study, a small, almost microscopic, synthetic fiber had been found clinging to the underside of the board. It was so minute it had been initially dismissed as environmental debris. But in the renewed, desperate search for anything, Dr. Sharma's successor, a young but brilliant forensic scientist named Dr. Lena Petrova, had re-examined all the unidentified fibers from every crime scene. "Detective," Petrova's voice crackled over the phone, barely containing her excitement. "I think we have something. The fiber from Eleanor Vance's apartment. It's a proprietary synthetic polymer. It matches a fiber found on Marcus Thorne's shoe, and trace amounts were present in the fibers collected from Dr. Sharma's home and Sarah Chen's car. It's too specific to be a coincidence. It's not from any common clothing or carpet material. Specialized." Corbin felt a surge of adrenaline, the first real hope in months. Specialized how, Dr. Petrova? It's primarily used in the manufacture of high-end industrial filters, specific types of protective gear, and specialized textile weaving equipment. It's extremely durable, almost like a microfilament. Weaving equipment. The word hit Corbin like a physical blow. The silent weaver. The knots. It was all coming together. Dr. Reed was immediately brought in. "This fiber isn't incidental," she declared, her eyes gleaming with renewed purpose. "This is from the killer's environment, or his tools. Weaving equipment. The weaver. He's not just leaving a symbolic knot. His very work, his craft, leaves a physical trace." The task force shifted its focus dramatically. They began to identify businesses and industries in the Chicago area that dealt with this specific polymer and its applications. The list was extensive but manageable. They were no longer looking for a needle in a haystack. They were looking for a specific type of needle in a smaller stack of hay. The pressure remained immense, but now it was tempered with a fragile hope. Corbin felt a flicker of the old fire returning, the quiet determination that had defined his career. He knew they were closer, that the killer, for all his meticulous planning, had made a mistake, a tiny, almost invisible thread that would ultimately lead them to his door. The tangled web was still dense, but now, for the first time, they had found a loose end, a single strand that, if pulled carefully, might just unravel the entire terrifying pattern. The discovery of the specialized polymer fiber was the turning point, a faint beacon in the suffocating darkness that had enveloped Chicago. Detective Corbin and Dr. Reed, now working in almost perfect synergy, spearheaded the investigation into the fiber's origins. Their combined efforts, driven by a desperate need for answers, began to untangle the killer's meticulously woven web. The forensic team, under Dr. Petrova's guidance, narrowed down the potential sources of the fiber to a handful of industrial manufacturers and niche craft supply companies in the broader Midwest region. It was a high-grade, durable synthetic most commonly used in bespoke industrial applications and, more interestingly, in advanced textile arts, specifically intricate modern weaving. The Silent Weaver moniker suddenly took on a terrifyingly literal meaning. Corbin pored over the victim files again, now with a new lens. He tried to ignore the surface-level differences and instead looked for a commonality, however abstract, that might link them to the concept of weaving or information. Eleanor Vance, the librarian, curated knowledge. Marcus Thorne, the software engineer, built systems of information. Dr. Anya Sharma, the forensic scientist, deciphered clues. Davy O'Connell, the bartender, was a hub of social connection and local gossip. Sarah Chun, the history teacher, shaped narratives and imparted knowledge. They all deal with information in one way or another, Corbin mused during a late-night session with Reed, pointing to the victim photos. They process it, disseminate it, create it, or interpret it. They're all threads in the city's intellectual and social fabric. Reed's eyes widened. Precisely, Miles. The killer isn't just a weaver, he's a self-appointed editor, a censor. He's targeting individuals who, in his twisted perception, either mishandle information, contribute to its pollution, or represent systems he feels have failed him. He sees himself as correcting the tangled narratives, cutting out the bad threads. This new understanding allowed them to refine their suspect list, cross-referencing individuals who had worked in or had grievances with institutions related to information, data, education, or even social media. They focused on individuals with a history of grievances, perceived injustices, or a strong, often paranoid, belief in truth and lies. The profile painted by Reed gained sharper edges. Intelligent, socially isolated, likely with a past failure or humiliation involving information or communication, leading to a deep-seated resentment. He would be meticulous, patient, and harbor a profound sense of self-righteousness. The list was still long, but one name began to surface with disturbing regularity: Elias Thorne. Elias Thorne was a 47-year-old former data analyst for a major Chicago-based tech firm. He had been dismissed 5 years prior, following a highly publicized incident where he accused his company of deliberately manipulating public data for financial gain. His claims, though initially dismissed as conspiratorial, had caused a minor scandal. He lost his job, his reputation, and subsequently his wife and home. He had become a recluse, living in a small, rented apartment above a defunct dry cleaner on the city's west side. His only known hobby being advanced textile arts, specifically complex digital weaving, for which he sourced specialized materials online. His online presence, though minimal, revealed a deep-seated bitterness towards fake news, corrupt institutions, and the manipulation of truth. He had even, in a chilling echo, posted cryptic messages about unraveling the lies and reweaving the true narrative. Thorne's apartment is a known address for receiving shipments of that specific polymer fiber, Petrova confirmed, her voice barely containing her excitement. He's been ordering it for years. The pieces clicked into place with a horrifying finality. The dismissed data analyst, the grievance against corrupted information, the specialized weaving hobby, the reclusive nature, the uncanny precision of the kills, the signature knots. It all pointed to Elias Thorne. Corbin felt a cold dread, but also a fierce determination. They had their man. A full tactical team, led by Corbin and Hansen, converged on Thorne's apartment building under the cloak of a moonless night. The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant wail of a siren, a stark reminder of the city they were fighting to protect. They established a perimeter, securing exits and entry points. Corbin and Hansen, accompanied by 2 SWAT officers, approached the front door. The scent of chemicals and something acrid, a mix of old dust, bleach, and something subtly metallic seeped from beneath the crack. It was the same smell Corbin remembered from Eleanor Vance's apartment. Elias Thorne, Chicago Police Department. We have a warrant. Open the door. Corbin's voice boomed, cutting through the silence. No answer. Only a faint, rhythmic clack 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 from inside, like a small, intricate machine at work. Breach, Corbin ordered. The door splintered under the force of the ram. They surged inside, weapons raised, flashlights cutting through the gloom. The apartment was an eerie reflection of Thorne's mind. Meticulously organized, almost clinically sterile in the main living areas, but with one room that stood as a stark, terrifying contrast. It was a dedicated workshop, filled with strange, complex machinery. A large, advanced digital loom dominated the space, its mechanical arms moving with hypnotic precision, weaving a complex pattern from black silk threads. On a workbench nearby, an array of precisely sharpened knives and blunt instruments lay gleaming under a task light. And tacked to a corkboard, amidst schematics for weaving patterns, were photos of his victims, each marked with a small, red X, and beneath them, chilling, handwritten notes. Eleanor Vance, Tainted Narratives. Marcus Thorne, Architect of Deceit. Dr. Anya Sharma, Blind to Truth. Davy O'Connell, Spreader of Gossip. Sarah Chun, Propagator of Half-Truths. Thorne was there, standing by the loom, his back to them, his slender fingers deftly guiding a new thread. He was unremarkable in appearance, thin, balding, wearing a clean but simple gray shirt and dark trousers. He didn't turn when the door crashed open, didn't flinch at the armed officers. The rhythmic clack-clack-clack of the loom continued, a perverse lullaby. Elias Thorne, Corbin said, his voice firm. Put your hands up. You're under arrest. Thorne slowly turned, his eyes devoid of fear, alight with a chilling, fanatic calm. He held a small, perfectly formed black silk knot in his left hand, the last one he had just finished. Arrested for what, detective? He asked, his voice soft, almost conversational. For correcting the flaws? For cutting out the cancerous threads of misinformation that choke our society. He gestured to the loom, where a complex, abstract tapestry was taking shape, dominated by black silk. I've been weaving the truth back into existence, one perfect knot at a time. Each one a rectification, a severing of the false, a binding of what should be. His gaze finally settled on Corbin, a flicker of something akin to pity in his eyes. You see the chaos, detective. I see the pattern. I simply chose to refine it. Corbin looked at the knot in Thorne's hand, then at the victim photos, then back at the loom, its mechanical arms still moving, endlessly weaving. The city's fear, the desperate hunt, the lives shattered, all were part of Thorne's twisted masterpiece. It's over, Elias, Corbin said, his voice laced with the weariness of a battle won, but the scars would remain. The weaving stops now. Thorne smiled then, a serene, disturbing smile that sent a shiver down Corbin's spine. Does it, detective? Or have I merely planted a seed? The pattern exists, whether you choose to see it or not. He dropped the knot gently to the floor, a final, defiant gesture, and slowly raised his hands. The capture of Elias Thorne, the silent weaver, brought an immediate, palpable wave of relief to Chicago. The headlines screamed his name, his chilling motives laid bare by Dr. Reed's analysis and his own calm, disturbing confessions. The city began its slow, painful process of healing, but the scars remained. The image of the black silk knot became a symbol, not just of terror, but of the unsettling truth that evil can wear the most unassuming face, and that beneath the surface of everyday life, a dark, meticulous mind can be quietly, patiently weaving destruction. Corbin stood in the courtroom during Thorne's trial, listening to the chillingly articulate testimony of a man who truly believed he was a savior, a purveyor of truth through murder. He looked at the knot, now a piece of evidence, encased in plastic, no longer a mysterious symbol but a concrete testament to a disturbed mind. He knew the city would move on, rebuild its sense of security, but he would never forget the cold precision, the deliberate artistry of the silent weaver. He had stopped the hands, But the memory of the pattern, the twisted logic of it all, would forever be woven into the fabric of his own weary soul. The threat was neutralized, but the question of what truly creates such darkness, of how deeply entangled human perception can become, remained an unsolvable riddle in the heart of a great city.